I was listening to this podcast. It was a colonel talking about the art of misinformation, and one of the things in there was that in order for misinformation, disinformation, whatever, however you want to categorize that, in order for it to actually work, it has to be at least like 60-70% truth. And so 60-70% is truth, and then they squeeze in 30-40% of the distortion of the lie, and that is how they're able to control how people feel, what people, herd mentality of thinking, is by using this art form of twisting information. Now, this is especially true when you get into alternative media as well. Remember, I tell you guys, there's no media out there in the social space that is about informing you of the truth. There isn't any. And I know that's a blanket statement. It seems like, how in the heck can I say that? Don't I know about, I don't know, Alex Jones, or sorry, my thing was about to fall, Alex Jones or Joe Rogan or who are some of the other big names? Whatever, you guys know. I don't need to reiterate it here. But the fact is, no, this isn't true. It is all crafted. Even those guys. So those guys are on their cell phones. Those guys are on the internet. Those guys are getting influenced too by these algorithms. So those guys are, their attention, and intention is getting steered by the same algorithms that you and I are. You see what I mean? So, I think I have a little bit of, I'm in a really lucky space because I can pretty much only watch what people send to me. So if someone in Light Body sends me something, I'll watch that most of the time, not always, but usually. Or if one of you guys, send me a video and you really want my take on it, I'll watch that. So the algorithms aren't quite as, dominant in what gets put in front of me, but it's still a thing. I'm getting somewhere here. It's going to take a minute because there's lots of layers within this 4D field. And this is what I want to do. I want to pick apart the 4D field so you understand that, as Richard Hoagland coined so many years ago, the lie is different at every level. The misinformation is different at every level. And when we are expanding beyond the typical human 3D perception and we're still running into misinformation, we're still running into distortions, it can get rather discouraging. It is until it's not. And I'm not saying that it's always going to be a not or it's always going to be an is. We are fluxing. We are sine wave flying through time space, right? So there's never a always or never. That does not ever. That is not true because we're in constant change all the time, constant shifting. And as I was saying earlier, we are in a very tumultuous time because of the chaos that's necessary to spur the change that is onsetting right now. Right. So we are here to help stabilize you, me, all of us who are awake to these other levels. We're here to help stabilize that consciousness by staying centered in our being. Yeah, we're going to get knocked off kilter here and there. Right. But it's not going to rule our existence. Well, until it does for a week or so, right? Depending on how triggering the narrative is. So I want to draw your guys' attention to a specific one because Dear Sister Starshine really spun from this, and I was surprised. But then I listened to, actually only listened to half of it, but I recognized why it created such a spin. And it's because this particular network, it's called the United Network News. You guys know this, with Kimberly Goguen. Am I saying this correctly? So, and I knew a little bit about this backstory. Dear Starshine brought my attention to it a few years ago because I think he's a fan, and he wanted to know my perspective on it. And the backstory he gave me was that Kimberly is a high-ranking person within Empire. So what I mean by Empire, and I've talked about this many times, but I'm going to recap it right here real quick, is this transgalactic interdimensional empire that is based on the commodification of life force energy. Okay, so in the movie Jupiter Ascending, if you guys haven't seen it, go see it. It's a good movie. It's good sci-fi. right? It's kind of like the cross. People coin it as the cross between Matrix and Star Wars, right? Because it goes into galactic empire, like in Star Wars, but it really outlines the whole farming of Lush and life force energy narrative that is in the Matrix, right? So the main character, her name's Jupiter, and she thinks she's just an everyday human. Things unfold in a funny kind of way, and it turns out that she is the reincarnation of a Mog queen. I'm going to call them in the empire, a Mog queen within the empire. And because she is the incarnation of this being, she has all of the rights that this being, and ownership of all of these things that the previous incarnation had, but it's all kept in the administration of empire. So she has to leave this, she ends up leaving the planet to go through the administration system of empire, which happens to be, I think, on Jupiter, right? To lay claim to her heritage. Now, I know I'm totally ruining the movie, but it's still kind of interesting. There's some, little side things in there that are cool. Anyway, this Kimberly character that is in part of this network news is said to be who the real person that this Jupiter character is portraying. Okay, so I'm talking about a real live human being that does news, an alternative news network. It's called United Network News, and she does the real news reports. And a lot of it is through the spectrum of black hats, white hats. Those of you who are familiar with alternative narratives understand what I mean by that. And it also ties into also the acknowledgement that systems are falling apart, right? But the interesting thing is the energy that the report is coming from, and this is really what I want to get to with you guys. You're a multidimensional being. I'm a multidimensional being. We may not be able to define and be fully descriptive in the levels that we are aware on, but we are aware. We do get data sets from those levels, even if we can't describe them. We do get feelings, hunches. We do get data sets through our emotional field, which is the primary vehicle for the 4D field to influence us with, is emotion, right? We pick up things on the 4D field. We cognitively don't know where it's coming from or why, but it is informing us in some way. It's making us feel uneasy, giving us a pit in our stomach, maybe taking us to a feeling of helplessness, hopelessness. And this is the whole point of these distortions in the 4D field, is to keep us latched on to that feeling of helpless, hopeless, doubtful, all these things. Versus in those moments when, say, in ceremony or in a deep meditation, where you feel overwhelmed with bliss and you feel interconnected with all things, and your heart is open, and you're just in an ecstatic state behind your eyes and your body, right? No, that's not a beneficial place for you to be necessarily for the agenda that this empire has. Now, even if you do reach that state, there's still some losing technology going on. So this kind of, when these kinds of things happen, this is where people start getting really discouraged, because it's like, God, does the rabbit hole of deception ever end? And I'm going to tell you, no, it doesn't ever end. But the point is not to get out of all the rabbit holes. It's really about getting in touch with oneself and navigating from that place. Now, oneself is a feeling, it's a sensation, it's a state of being when you're anchored in that way. And when you're in that state of being and engaging in these different delusions, it's no big deal. It's like, oh yeah, that's interesting. People are really buying into that one, right? It's not that big of a deal, and it doesn't really influence you, because you're not investing your life force energy into those Saturn matrices that are falling away. You're not investing your life force energy into the different programs that tell us this is how we have to live our life. This is how we have to make a living. This is how we have to approach conflict. This is how, this is all we have to choose from on what food we're going to nourish our bodies with. You see what I mean? It's like we choose stuff outside of the program.